We've expanded, and we are now one of the nation's largest community leadership organizations. And we have programming that spans from high school, college students, executive professionals, through retirees. We even offer a robust consulting and training arm. I am an alumna of our Quest program, so to all my fellow LGH program alumni, I say welcome home to LGH. We are so happy to continue to serve you in your leadership journey. As all my fellow alumni can share, one of the most important aspects of effective leadership is the ability to evolve and the ability to respond to the needs of those you are leading. And this is how this virtual series came to be. It was created in response and in service to our network as we're all trying to navigate this new normal. We hope that this series provides you with new tools and new perspectives. If you have any ideas on future workshops that you'd like to see LGH put on, please don't forget to share that in your feedback form after today's session, or if you'd like to discuss any customized leadership training with you or your team, please reach out to us after today's workshop. So this virtual series was inspired by the creativity of our program staff. However, converting creativity into reality for our network is not possible without investment in our investors. So I would like to thank today's presenting sponsor, Express Strategies, for making today's session free for our audience and for our network. Thank you so much, Express Strategies. For more information about Express Strategies, the link to their website is available in the chat feature. And throughout today's session, you are encouraged to send all of your questions to us via the chat feature. Your mic will be muted, but you're welcome to send your thoughts, your comments, and insights directly to the chat. Karen Centeo, our Director of Consulting and Training, and Destiny Davis, our Program Coordinator, will respond to you there. Today is also made possible through the generous investment of our visionary sponsors. We thank you so much for your partnership and your commitment to excellence in community leadership. So we encourage you all to connect with us on social media via our varied social handles. We always have good news to share across these platforms. So stay connected and stay inspired even after the workshop is over. And without any further delay, I am so excited to welcome today's workshop facilitator. I am beyond thrilled to have Dr. Jessica Nicklin with us today. She is the Associate Vice President for Student Success at the University of Hartford. Her research and interests include workplace motivation, the work and family interface, and how positive psychology influences well-being and success. So without any further ado, welcome Dr. Nicklin.
Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to try to do the quick screen share. Did that work?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. As Cara said, I'm Jessica Nicklin. I'm the Associate Vice President for Student Success at the University of Hartford. But my first love and where it all began was teaching in the psychology department. And I know that I have some friends here today. So hi, everybody. And part of the research that I've done, it has surrounded what we would traditionally call work-family balance. But what I've been thinking a lot about, as you'll see today, and what since the COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to think about is, what is balance? And does balance even exist at all? So what I'm going to do is go through a little bit of background. And I hope that as I go through the boring, dry, researchy kind of things, that you can think about how does it apply to you. So that's something that I really enjoy about this topic, and I enjoy when I talk about motivation or positive psychology, is that even if it's a little researchy or a little sciencey, you can find something that you can identify with. So I encourage you to think about what could work for you, or how have you felt this way. Then I'm going to introduce a new approach that goes beyond balance and make some practical recommendations, because I think it's important for you to be able to leave with some tangible things that you might be able to start doing, today. So I'm sure you're no stranger to work-family conflict. So I say work-family, and then in parentheses, as you'll see throughout, I mention life, because the traditional research historically has talked about the conflicts or managing work and family. But what is family, I think to you, can be so broad. So if we're really talking about the whole person and your whole experience, I might use the terminology work family, but I encourage you to think about really what does that mean to you? So it's more like work life. For some people, there might not be an immediate family, but there might be, school that you're balancing, and work, and your church organization, and your pets, and all of these things that are important to you. So if you hear work-family balance, also feel free to substitute that life piece in there as well. So this research, and specifically around conflict, began in the 80s and really exploded in the 90s when women started going to school and started going to work. But women were also expected to still maintain the household. So what are we going to do? You only have so much time and you only have so many resources. And if you're working and taking care of a family, naturally there's going to be some conflict. So by definition, work-family conflict is a form of interrole conflict in which the work pressures from the work and family domains are mutually incompatible in some respect. So I'm sure, think about a time where you have felt work-family or work-life conflict. This can go in both directions. So work can interfere with family. An example I think of is you can't make a soccer game because you have to work late. But family can also interfere with work. So you can't go to work and go to an important meeting because you have a sick child at home. So you can sense, I know you can probably feel it, that example or that time that you felt that conflict where you needed to be in two places at once, you needed to be two people at once, and you just couldn't do it. So as expected, there are decades of research and studies and meta-analyses showing that generally work-family conflict is bad. The more work-family conflict that we perceive, the less satisfied we tend to be with our work, our jobs, our families, our careers, the less committed to those domains as well, lower levels of performance, and higher levels of turnover and turnover intentions, absenteeism, lateness, stress, burnout, and alcohol use. So this isn't to say, of course we all have a bad day and we all have that stressful, like, oh, I have to be here and then I have to be here and we all feel like we're not doing a good job. But, this is sustained feelings of conflict over time that could ultimately make us, have these negative outcomes. So much like figuring out what conflict leads to, a lot of research has also looked into what are some factors that can buffer or reduce these feelings of conflict. So these are just a select few, but things like role clarity. If you know what you're supposed to do at your job and your expectations are clear, then it's easier to navigate those work and family boundaries. Flexibility and schedule control. I think you'll see this as a theme throughout, that having flexibility, autonomy over your decisions, autonomy over how you navigate your family and your work really goes a long way. Support as well. So support from your family, support from friends, support from coworkers, supervisors, that also is really important in minimizing the effects of work-family conflict. But, I said that I like positive psychology, and this is supposed to be about being positive. It's not all bad. And in about the early 2000s, we started to recognize a more balanced view of the work-family interface that acknowledges that having multiple roles is actually really beneficial. So if you are a parent, you are gaining skills and perspectives and resources in that role. If you're a student, you're gaining skills and perspectives and resources in that role, and in your work as well. So work-family enrichment is the positive side, is the opposite of this conflict view. The extent to which experiences in one role improve the quality of life in the other role. So again, these can be skills and perspectives, resources, flexibility, and even things like material resources like money and space. And just like conflict, work can positively impact family, and family can positively impact work. So some examples I think of are, at work, you make money, which you bring home and then positively impacts your family. Or at work, you might gain skills in scheduling and conflict resolution that you can then take home in your personal life and apply. Your personal life, your family might put you in a good mood, and then that might spill over into your work life. So we can certainly have conflict, but we can also benefit from multiple roles because multiple roles produce resources. So this list looks kind of like the conflict list, but research shows that the more enrichment you feel or perceive, the more satisfied you are with your work and family, the more committed you are, higher levels of performance, lower levels of turnover, stress, and burnout. So conflict is bad, enrichment is good. And again, just like the conflict slide, factors that promote enrichment, so things that you can do as a supervisor or as an employee, is seek out support. So support is really important for feeling perceptions of enrichment. Family-friendly policies and a family-friendly work culture, also important. Work engagement, so being motivated, feeling invested in what you're doing, and of course your family support. So I'll take a breath. We've got conflict, we've got the negative side, we've got enrichment, we've got the positive side. So you can experience both. They're not mutually exclusive. You can feel like you're having conflict, but also simultaneously be benefiting from having multiple roles. But this gets a little cumbersome and a little confusing, right? Your head might already be spinning. So as a leader, if you're trying to think of policies and where do you go from here, it's kind of like, well, how do I explain enrichment? How do I explain conflict? So what you often see in the media and in kind of pop culture is this idea of balance. Like, how do we achieve it all? How do we get it all? And this is not a new concept. It's just that a lot of times balance ends up being equated with a lack of conflict or having enrichment. But balance itself and what balance is in, I would say, the research world is actually not really well understood. So here are just some examples that I pulled of definitions. And I actually don't think this is any more intuitive or easy to understand either. So bear with me. Tendency to become fully engaged in the performance of every role in one's total role system. A global assessment that work resources meet family demands and family resources meet work demands, such that participation is effective in both. This all sounds great, right? We wish we felt this way. The extent to which an individual is equally engaged in and satisfied with his or her work and family role. And an overall appraisal of the extent to which individuals' effectiveness and satisfaction in work and family roles are consistent with the life values at any given point in time. So I guess to be easy, we can say balance is a global construct. The more balanced we feel, the better. The less balanced we feel, it's not great. But from a research perspective and a theory perspective, balance is really not a very well understood concept. But we see it everywhere, right? So I just did a quick Google search when I was preparing for this meeting, and this is a Business News Daily article, How to Improve Your Work-Life Balance Today. This was Forbes, I believe. Yep, 6 tips for better work-life balance. This is a local newspaper, the Knoxville Focus. Office Neighborhoods, tips for work-family balance in the COVID-19 age. New York Times, striking a balance between work and family. And then, of course, I just did a quick Amazon search, and there are no shortage of self-help books, and the list could have gone on all about how to manage your work and family, balancing it all. I mean, here's the professional woman in a suit wearing an apron, literally balancing it. Super dads, what does that even mean? So it seems like, popular culture loves this idea of balance and how to have it all. But the literature hasn't quite caught up with that, or the research hasn't quite caught up with that. And I'm noticing that just as many articles and news stories that are coming out about how to have it all, I'm starting to see people questioning, does balance even exist at all? Is this what we should even be shooting for? Are we shooting for something that doesn't even exist? So think about that for a minute. Just, does balance exist at all? Is this a real thing? And here are some reasons that are starting to come out in terms of why some researchers are skeptical balance. And I think that I agree. So this comes from a book by Tracy Brower, where she suggests that if you're shooting for balance, you almost never win. It's a zero-sum game. If you think of a scale, one side is always up, and if that side is up, then that implies that the other side must be down. So I don't know if that's always the case. Just because you're up at work doesn't mean you have to be down in your personal life, and vice versa. It implies an equal separation of your time and your resources. And if we really think of that whole person perspective, you know, where is the space for your schooling and your friends and your animals and your clubs and hobbies? How does that get divvied up among the 100% of yourself? Balance also really focuses on time, so the quantity of your life instead of the quality or the actual value that you're having, and that's a big limitation. And it also infers that work and family or work and life are separate. And I think many of us know that work is really important to who we are. It's how we identify. So if you try to separate those two things in order to balance them, it's not that balance is bad. It's that, is it even really a true goal to strive for? And, you know, again, we're starting to see that some authors and people that are in the media are saying there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work, there's life, and there is no balance. This is Ariana Huffington. The conversation is built on false premise. The truth is that we bring our whole selves to work. Work, life, well-being, and productivity are not on the opposite sides needing to be balanced. So if you're feeling like I'm not balanced, I think that's okay. Or if you're thinking, you know, what do I do to have it all? Maybe that's not the question that you should be asking yourself. So what I would encourage you to do, and what I've been thinking a lot about, especially being home with a 2-year-old during the COVID-19 pandemic, is about thriving, the idea of thriving. So thriving is not a new idea. Thriving doesn't mean that things are perfect. You can thrive when you're down and having a bad day, and you can thrive when you're up and you're doing great. It integrates the whole person. It integrates vitality and learning. So instead of focusing so much on balancing our life, which might not be realistic, what if we focus on thriving? So we don't need a whole new theory. You're like, thank you. We don't have to listen to her talk about a whole new theory. We don't need, you know, a ton of, you know, necessarily brand new research to understand this. So anyone who's ever taken maybe a Psych 101 class or an Intro to Management class has probably heard of self-determination theory by DC and Ryan. And what they say is that thriving and fulfillment and psychological satisfaction is based on 3 needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So what I believe is that achieving a fulfilling career and satisfying personal life by leveraging our connections, which is our relatedness, and our strengths, our competence, to have control over how our work and personal lives are managed, that's our autonomy, is work-life thriving. So I'll take you through this. What's really nice about this perspective is that, again, self-determination theory has been studied for decades. There's a ton of research, and it applies pretty much universally. So it's a perspective that, you know, applies across cultures, across genders. Of course, there are some moderators and some differences, but the basic assumption is that fulfillment of these 3 needs are essential ingredients for thriving. So autonomy, this is probably the most well understood component of the model. The psychological need to experience self-determination and endorse the cause of one's behavior as one's own. So when we feel externally controlled by outside influences, this leads to negative outcomes. There's so much research that shows that autonomously motivated behavior is critical and is especially important for thriving. So an example that I give when I'm teaching is, if you think about a child that loves playing Little League and then loves T-ball and then Little League and then plays varsity, and then goes to college and now has a scholarship. There's this element of control by that scholarship. You're playing baseball because you have to. I mean, you might still like it, but as soon as you have some external influence that comes in and makes you feel like you're being controlled, that minimizes your motivation. Competence, so the second element. So that's the need to feel effective in one's environment and have an opportunity to demonstrate and improve one's abilities. So this is having a variety of challenges in your work and in your personal life, and having the appropriate skill sets to match those challenges. And finally, relatedness. So the psychological need to be valued, respected, and regarded as important by others. So this means that having others in your life that, you know, can give to you, but also that you can give back to as well. So autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And if you want to remember it, you can say CAR is the acronym. That always helps. So what can you do? And again, something I love about this model, and we're applying it to work life in this case, and work family, but is that very subtle changes in your thinking and very subtle changes in the environment or the context can really go a long way. So you don't have to put a ton of money into programming, and you don't have to buy a ton of books. There are really small changes that you can make that really can help you thrive. So here are just some quick suggestions. So to support autonomy in your work and your personal life, you need opportunities for direction and choice. And I know that's not always practical. You have to go to work Monday through Friday. You have to show up at a certain time, but you always have choice over how you approach that. You might have some choice over if you work out in the morning or if you work out at night. Find the opportunities in your day to feel like you have control over your actions, over your life. Same thing for your family. Things that hurt, or they use the terminology thwart, which I love saying, are really harsh deadlines, threatening feedback or threatening deadlines, and really salient extrinsic rewards. So this is a great example of, we think that rewarding people with bonuses or a raise, yeah, sure, we all love it, but sometimes when we tie people's behaviors to those external incentives, it really can reduce motivation and thriving. Competence. So again, giving optimal challenge, opportunities for challenge, and supportive feedback. So that's important in both work and family. Feeling like you're in a dead end, limited opportunities, really harsh, demeaning evaluations will definitely minimize perceptions of competence. And finally, relatedness. So social interactions, communal relationships, and this is especially important, you know, now that we're all working, or most of us are working from home. How do you create these feelings among your staff when everybody's, you know, calling in on a Zoom meeting? But that's still really important. You don't want to isolate people or, you know, ever make them feel embarrassed. So I'm not an artist, but this is my model. So work-life thriving, you can't separate work and you can't separate family. I mean, you can try, but my guess is that it's really difficult. And don't think of it as balance. You know, work and family are not necessarily separate. This is a true holistic view where your needs being fulfilled in each of these domains overlap with each other. So you can thrive in everyday experiences, little moments. You can have a bad day and still thrive. You can have a day where you feel unbalanced, maybe because you had to work late and you didn't get to see your children, but you still can be thriving as long as you're fulfilling these psychological needs in your relevant domains. So, what can you do? We've already alluded a little bit to this, but what I think you can think about for yourself in your own development, again, exercising choice over activities. So giving yourself permission to choose how and when you do things. And again, I know that there's structure required and that there is things that you absolutely have to do, but give yourself permission to make decisions that give you autonomy. Focus on quality of experiences, not quantity of experiences. So I think about, I always feel like I have to get to every single party and I have to be at every family event, and I put so much pressure on myself. Do you have to get to every PTA meeting and every soccer game? What if you focused on the quality of your experiences instead of the quantity, instead of checking the box? And that kind of then takes balance out of the equation. Take risks, challenge yourself. It's so easy for us to get into our little, I guess our little boxes, or our places of comfort. But if an opportunity opens or a door opens for you, take it. Do training when it's available to you. Stretch your skills. Ask for more responsibility at work. If you want. But, if you start getting that sense of feeling bored, take those risks, talk to your supervisor. And same thing with your family or your friends or your relationships. Plan those trips that might not be feasible right now because we're not flying anywhere, but might be something to look forward to for the future. Consider a hobby, something that could challenge you intellectually outside of work, that could stimulate you, and maybe something you can do with your family. And for the relatedness pieces, ask for what you need. Ask for what you need from your partner, from your family, from friends. You need support. Support comes up as an important component of this, from reducing conflict to promoting enrichment and balance. Support is so important. So build strong relationships at work and in your personal life, and ask people for what you need. And for our supervisors out there, what are some things that maybe you could do to help your employees thrive in their work and family management? So be autonomy supportive. So not just supportive in the sense of like, hey, good job, you're great, but also help staff figure out how they can, again, take charge of their own decisions and their own work. That's really important. Create opportunities for challenges and feedback. So if I'm telling you to go out and seek those challenges and feedback, as a supervisor, if somebody comes to you and has ideas or is looking for more challenge, make sure that you're able to hopefully support them through it, or providing feedback in order to build competence. Build collegial environments, of course. So find ways to help develop those relationships and develop those support networks among your staff. And if I feel like I have to say, recognize individual differences. So as much as I believe that this model and this approach of thriving and using self-determination theory is an avenue that really does apply to the masses, everybody is different, and everybody's needs are different, and everybody's situation is different. So as a supervisor, the best thing to do is, have a conversation and try to get a sense of what do your employees need in order to be able to thrive at work, and of course in their work family management. So my final recommendation, and this has us separate a little bit from the self-determination theory, the competence, autonomy, and relatedness. But this is something that I think is really, really important, and I've been talking about it with anybody who will pretty much listen, is that supervisors, entry-level employees, interns, it doesn't matter. Everybody needs to learn to be self-compassionate. We are so good at giving our friends compassion, at listening, at saying like, don't worry about it, you'll get them next time, buddy. But when it comes to ourselves, we don't extend that same courtesy. So if anyone's heard of Kristin Neff, this is her work, and I included the link at the bottom of the slide. You can just Google Kristin Neff self-compassion. But being compassionate to yourself, this is so important to be able to thrive. And I've been thinking about this with being home, thinking of balancing, I have a 2-year-old here and I'm also trying to work. And sometimes you just have to stop and say, today is okay. This is enough, moving on. So self-compassion involves 3 elements. It's mindfulness. So when something negative or happens to you, or you have a setback, don't ruminate over it. Let those feelings, let that experience enter into your awareness, and think about it, process it, and move on. Don't think over and over and over again how, oh, I messed up, I sent that email, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Get out of that ruminating tendency. Go ahead and let yourself feel it and move on. Be mindful, move on. Common humanity, recognizing that you are not alone, that what you are going through, other people are also going through, they're also experiencing. Do not isolate. So especially in the COVID-19, where many of us are home, we're dealing with things we never thought that we would ever deal with, and you might feel really isolated, literally and psychologically, but know that you are not alone. So mindful, common humanity, and self-kindness. It's so easy for us to stand in front of the mirror and say, I'm not tall enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not smart enough. And we tend to be so critical of ourselves. Be kind to yourself. And if you're interested in this, I would definitely encourage you to look up Kristen Neff's exercises and work. There are a lot of simple, like 1 minute kind of self-compassion, mindfulness activities you can do every day to help you stay feeling like it's okay. It's okay that I didn't get to sit at my desk for the full 8 hours because I had to step away to take care of a 2-year-old, but I'll get up earlier tomorrow to make up for it. And not feeling like you have to be perfect at everything all the time. So that is work-life thriving with a little bit of self-compassion sprinkled in at the end. So what I'd like to ask you to think about is what is something that you think you could take away from this presentation, or are there any recommendations or elements of this that you think would benefit you? And if so, feel free to throw them in the chat box.
Thank you, Jessica. Karen, do we have any chats coming through that we can share?
None that I see so far, but I'm looking. I'm giving everyone an opportunity to think of their point they'd like to make and pop it into the chat. Oh yeah, there's one. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I think that's also about having a choice or allowing yourself to say, I'm not going to worry about that. And that's a form of autonomy, is I'm not going to worry about that little itty bitty thing and get stressed out over it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And there's a comment in here. I love this one. I think we can all relate to this. So what does the research say about achieving balance when you're working from home? What strategies work?
Yeah, well, I mean, does balance even exist? But so ironically, even before all the COVID stuff, I had done some work on telecommuting and telecommuting best practices. So some things that come to my mind immediately are having a special or sacred place that's your workplace, if possible. And some houses allow for that and some don't, but finding a way that you can set boundaries, and especially, having conversations with your spouse and with your family about what that means. So remember, early on, I said conflict is reduced when you have role clarity, and the same thing for your family. So my husband's a full-time telecommuter, and I remember when we first started living together feeling like, you're home all day. Why can't you, throw the dishwasher on and just throw a load in? Like, why can't, but you have to make those expectations clear. And say, when I'm working, I'm working, and when I'm home, and that helps a lot. I mean, if possible, if that works for you. But a space that's yours that you can talk with your family about, that belongs to you, can help as well.
I love that. And
I love that too.
Yeah, it was a great comment and great response. And someone says thriving integrates the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think so.
I like what Beth wrote. You can't be everything to everyone.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, here's a great one from Bernard. And how would you share with employees or colleagues shifting from a work-life balance approach to thriving approach so that everyone's on the same page? So how do you introduce that concept?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think, starting by maybe demonstrating that shooting for balance, or that the expectation of this team is not to be perfectly balanced, and recognizing the reality of our situation. And even when we go back to work, you know, the reality of balancing in general. So I would probably start with that, and then introduce thriving through the three needs. So what are some ways, and again, giving tangible, specific recommendations that can enhance autonomy. What's something you could do right now? Competence and relatedness. And I think it would be a culture shift, a culture change, but you know, can definitely be done, but would have to be supported by the top down, and understood bottom up.
Absolutely. So it has to be a culture
Yeah.
kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for everyone popping in the comments. So are we moving to Q&A?
Yeah, let's move to Q&A. Destiny, what are some of the questions that have come in so far that we can share?
Sure. We have a great question from Megan, and she asked, you mentioned feel like you have to go to everything, but how is it better to focus on quality over quantity? Do you have any advice for combating that guilt?
Oh, I think that you have to take a look at what's really important to you, and then also maybe prioritize based on your values and where you really want to be, and instead of where you really need to be. And taking an honest look at, well, what is the consequence? Somebody had said you can't be everything to everyone. What's the consequence of trying to force yourself to go to every single thing or attend every meeting, or you know what I mean? So taking an honest look at that, and trying to whittle out, well, if it's going to exhaust me and going to stress me out, and I'm going to be miserable at these things, then these things have to go. So, and I know it's easier said than done, because having those conversations with people you care about and you don't want to disappoint is really hard. But I think if you take an honest look at your values and what's important to you, and then what are the consequences of trying to do it all, that will give you some insight into how to prioritize.
Yeah, that's really true. I think it's hard to limit all the options, especially for those extrovert people who are eager to to do everything and be everything. Karen, any other questions that have come through?
There's a great question. I think it might have come from Katie. And she said, asking for what you need can be tough. Yeah. So are there any tips that you can give for self-advocacy? Mm-hmm. Really, that's what she's asking.
Yeah. Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is knowing what's the culture in your organization, and having a sense of what resources and things might already be available to you. Mm-hmm. And I know that everyone's relationships with their supervisors differ. You know, you might see your supervisor every day, or you might not see your supervisor hardly ever, but maybe trying to establish some kind of routine in meeting. So then that way it's not so out of the blue, like I need this, and this. And I would say also prioritize what is it most that you need to get out of that meeting or out of that ask. So you wouldn't want to go with like a laundry list of all of the things that you need in order to be successful. But I think identifying what are the most important things that you need in order to be able to thrive at work and also manage your family, and have that. So I'm thinking prioritizing and also knowing what resources are available to you already.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And like you said, clarifying your ask before you go there and do a laundry dump.
Yeah.
Laundry list of all the things that you need. Yeah, I like that. Thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a question from Stephen Ristel, and he says, I love your whole person framework. I have found that demands change over our lifespan, family/life and work. Can you speak to the value of ongoing review and collaboration of the management of the elements in your model?
Yes. So self-determination theory is something that's been explored a lot. Work family, something that's been explored a lot. Bringing them together into one model, definitely new. So it needs some empirical research, it needs some data collection, And one thing that we did in order to start kind of stimulating this idea is that we just asked working professionals, tell us about your best day, and then tell us about what your worst day is like. So we got a sense from people before even getting here of how do you describe your best days. And it's when people feel in control and all of their boxes are checked and their family is fed, and it is the most simple everyday things. And when people feel out of control is when they're not meeting all their responsibilities and they're not feeling competent, and they feel like they have no control over what's going on. So that research did help inform this perspective, but absolutely, we definitely need more research in order to refine this. So that's what will keep me busy, I think, for a while.
Dr. Nicklin, I have just a follow-up question around Steve's, and you alluded to this, when people bring their whole selves to work and providing autonomy, and what is sort of the relationship and dynamics between having an inclusive or equitable environment and autonomy in the workplace, and with having different people coming from different perspectives? I'm curious to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about that is a lot of times when we have, this is where it all gets confusing. We have flexible policies or we have family-friendly policies. Sometimes the opposite will happen, that maybe people won't want to take them, or they'll feel guilty about taking them, or they end up benefiting one group over another group. So there are definitely unintended consequences when we think that we're doing the right thing and we think that we're offering policies and things that benefit the masses, and then we don't. So yeah, right. You cannot tell your staff, go ahead and come in, you want to work, you want to come in at 10:30, that works for you. So we have to have some structure, absolutely. And we have to have some clear expectations and role clarity. But I think helping our staff identify opportunities for self-direction within the confines of getting the work done is what's key. So what is something that COVID-19 has taught us is that we can get a lot of work done from home. We can do a lot of meetings on the phone that we were bringing people together, in the office for. So there's an example right there, is you have to work 9 to 5. But is it possible to look at what are the opportunities for self-direction within that? And I think that's what supervisors can do.
I had a question here from Chris, and it's a great question. I think it's probably top of mind for everybody. So what are the trends that are emerging during the COVID social distancing that we might want to protect after social distancing goes away?
So trends that we might want to keep.
Casual work attire?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, is perhaps some flexibility in how you get your work done. So we've seen that you can do it, and it might not always be optimal, but yeah, are there opportunities to get your work done in a fashion that would not have traditionally been accepted? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a question from Ted, and he asked, why do HR departments focus so much on compensation packages when what really matters to most people after meeting basic salary requirements are autonomy, mastery, purpose, and relatedness, etc.?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, especially with the younger generations entering the workforce. I mean, what research is showing is that interest in travel and meaningful work is more important than the actual compensation. So I don't think I have a good answer for that in terms of why, across the globe, HR departments haven't completely shifted that model. I mean, I think in some industries it's the fact that the work is creative and can help, but yeah, I don't think I have a good answer for why we haven't made more of a shift culturally.
Yeah, there was a great question from Kelly, and How does resilience or
Mhm.
building resilience blend with the thriving theory?
Yeah, I love the resilience work. Yeah, and I think that's part of the, I could see resilience applying to all of the pieces, because the ability to bounce back, come back, after adversity, after disappointment. I mean, in a sense, that is a choice. You need some freedom to make that decision. You need to feel like you're capable enough to do that. You need to have some sense of confidence that I can do better, I can overcome this, I can get past this, and probably also having a support system. So, I mean, I think resilience is really important, and we're seeing more and more research come out about that and finding ways to build resilience. But I absolutely see the two working together or overlapping.
We have another great question that says, what does research reveal about achieving balance while working from home? What strategies work?
Oh yeah. I think most of these things I may have mentioned, but I'm thinking again, creating clear expectations, clear boundaries with family, and also with supervisors. So it's equally as important for us to have the conversation with our family as we are to say, what do you expect from me, boss? Do you expect me to be sitting in front of my computer from 9 to 5, or can I, step away to make my family lunch and come back? So I think clarifying the expectations with your boss and also with your family is really important. And I think finding those opportunities to connect with your colleagues is so important. So the few times, I have one-on-ones with my staff, and I've thought, like, I have nothing to talk about, we end up filling up the whole hour because people want to talk. They need to talk. And not about personal things, but just about general, work. And I think that does fit in with that relatedness feeling of needing to feel connected to people. So, feeling connected to your friends, to your family, to people at home, but also feeling connected to your coworkers as well.
I love
To
that.
that point, Megan Warren just wrote in the trend she'd like to keep is that colleagues check in on each other more often. When you're physically in the office, sometimes you forget to do that. So being distanced, maybe that's something that we keep. I love that, Megan.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this, but I've had a lot of friends who have wanted to do Zoom happy hours or Zoom game nights, and that has helped me connect with people that I haven't connected with in a long time, that I may not have seen, intentionally gone to visit, but it's helped me kind of reconnect with friends. So it's something too.
Absolutely. There's some other really great questions that have come in. Karen, any that speak out to you?
Okay, I'm looking. There was one from Rosita. I'm looking.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, yeah. So from Rosita, there's been there's those that have been impacted the most during COVID-19 are the least autonomous in the workplace because many are entry level or lower level status employees. How can we as leaders in our community advocate for a cultural shift to work-life thriving? So how can we leaders be better advocates for those entry-level folks?
Great question.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
No, right?
Yeah, I think some of this does go back to the culture change and thinking about, so entry level hourly type employees who are more restricted in terms of having to be somewhere at a certain time. Absolutely. So I would say it's helping them find opportunities in their day to feel in control. So again, they might not be able to choose the time that they come to work, or they might be most impacted by the COVID, but what is it about your life, your work situation, your home right now that you're in control in, and helping them, take charge of that and feel that. That's one of the first things that come to my mind. But if anyone else has anything, feel free. That was a big one. That was a good one.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I love the list that you gave for managers to connect, be an autonomous supporter and so forth. In addition to what you said, I think also meeting with each one of your employees and asking them, what is it that you need to do your best work in this environment?
Yeah.
And then seeing what folks come up with and seeing what can be accommodated, what can be different as a result of that. But thank you, Jess.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Andre would like to know, do you have any recommendations on how to forgive ourselves?
It definitely takes practice. And that's why I really like this approach, because if I'm not good at forgiving myself today, I can be okay at it tomorrow. So like, don't not forgive yourself for not forgiving yourself. And it takes practice. And I watched myself after having read a lot about it and done some of the exercises and done some of the work, doing it with saying like, it's okay if my son watches 3 hours of TV today, even though I don't like that, because I have to be able to work. And that takes practice, that takes time. So yeah, if you're definitely interested, look up Kristen Neff's self-compassion page, and on it are their 1-minute exercises that you can do every day, things you can say to yourself. And the research shows that it's actually pretty effective. So I'm somebody who wants to do yoga, who wants to meditate, who wants to learn to be more mindful, but I'm not really very good at it. Maybe I could get better, but I haven't been able yet to get there. But this is something that I can do quickly, and I've changed my brain to some extent, my thought process, to be able to say like, it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. We'll start over. You're human. This happens to other people. You're not alone. So, but it does definitely take, much like all of these things that take culture shifts and recognition, it really does take practice and a change in how you think and how you respond.
You have to actually rewire your brain, it sounds like. Yeah. So not an easy one-day task.
No, but if it only takes a minute a day, then it is realistic, like when I say, I'm going to learn to meditate today, or I have my sticky note right here that says like, do yoga every day. And I just haven't been able to, but I have been able to say like 1 minute, of like going through the situation and just really, forgiving myself.
Absolutely. I wanted to also reiterate the Kristen Neff work, and on her website, there is an assessment you can take. It is quite a revealing assessment, so when you take it, just still be kind to yourself. But it'll give you a great benchmark for you to see where you are self-compassionate with yourself and where you might not be. So it's a practice. So it's a practice that requires practice. But thank you for bringing her to the conversation.
Yeah.
So Karen, do we have any last questions before we wrap up today? Do we have time for maybe one more question?
I'm looking.
I'm looking at all the attendees. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And
can I add one more thing? Copper Beach Institute also teaches Kristen Neff's course. For those of you who would like to go to an actual course, that is a wonderful place to start.
So we will be sharing these slides with everybody. This is being recorded, so we'll share this recording with everybody. There was a couple of that came up a couple of times in the chat. Thank you all so much for your questions today. Dr. Nicklin, thank you. This was so great. I think it was everything that everybody needed today. It really was lovely. The quality of the content was just fantastic. So thank you so much. I just want to take a quick moment again to thank you all for coming and to thank Express Strategies for being our sponsor today. Thank you for making this session possible. And thank you to our visionary sponsors again for their generous support. I want to do a special shout out to Dr. Nicklin's University of Hartford and to all of our visionary sponsors. Thank you guys for investing in community leadership. So really, a great opportunity coming up. We talked about it quite a lot today. The next opportunity to grow your leadership muscle in this series is Wednesday, June 10th with Copper Beach Institute and Peter Callahan, class of 2020 for Quest. They will present mindfulness and resilience in crisis. And Karen is moderating that session. And the LGH staff participated in a mindfulness workshop last year with Copper Beach, and I can tell you from personal experience, this session is not to be missed. And we just talked about it as, one of the first steps of self-compassion. So the link to that session is now being sent out in the chat box. Thank you, Destiny. And so just around the corner, we will host a toast to Ted. Our president and CEO, Ted Carroll, is retiring after 35 years of service. So we hope that you will all join us for this virtual celebration. We'll have a happy hour and a celebratory Ted Carroll talk on Tuesday, June 23rd from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Please visit our website for more information, and we hope you all submit a video farewell to him as well and help us toast him. Destiny's also sending that link right now to the chat. So again, thank you all for joining.